Today we're talking about double lift. Double lift is engaging in a challenge to reach challenger within the mid lane role. Just quickly taking a look at his OPGG, he's doing a very good job. He's currently sitting at a roughly 360-ish LP, doing very well on the likes of Victor, TF, Azir. And today, look, I could sit here and I could do a 2-hour video highlighting all the little things. I want to cut the fat, cut the bullshit, get straight to 3 key areas that I think double lift can improve on, areas that I think are commonly overlooked. And I think if he can make these adjustments, it's really going to help his climb to challenger. And some of these things may be obvious, some of them may not. So let's go ahead and take a look at a few little clips and get into the details. This first one we're going to cover is what I call lull state usage / map state calibration. So basically, one of the big challenges of a mid laner is being very aware of everything that's happening on around you, right? You need to be aware of where your jungler is at all times. You need to be aware of who has prio everywhere. And especially when you're playing champions like that of any mobile mage, but specifically also champions like TF that play the map, you need to know at all times where everyone is, because this is going to be the difference between you being able to pull the trigger or not pull the trigger. Now, all of us sitting here watching Double Live stream with a cup of coffee, it's very easy for us to critique him because at the end of the day, when you're not in the game, League looks very easy. But when you're in the game is very overwhelming. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving pieces. That is a very difficult part of playing League of Legends, being constantly aware of the map state. So there are moments in Doubleless games where he makes these sorts of plays, which, he's taking a lot of reference points. He's got the man advantage. He's made Mel react. You can tell he's very aware of his teammates' locations, but tunnel vision's a little bit too much on getting that R play onto the MF, doesn't realize the bot lane has moved, gets pincered, turns into an absolute disaster, baiting in his entire team essentially. Poor Malphite's trying to be like, wait for me. And then, it turns into an absolute shit show. And look, an argument, I don't know exactly what his thought process. Maybe he knew where everyone was and thought he could make the play happen anyway. But more often than not, when I'm working with a lot of master tier players, people that are kind of making that push to master to grandmaster to challenger, they typically have a very good understanding of, for the most part, what they need to do, but they struggle from a perspective of mental stack, gathering a mass amount of information, processing that information and coming to a quick decision. And this to me is kind of the inkling of someone that is, again, having a little bit of an overwhelmed mental stack, tunnel visioning, and not really processing the big picture. And we'll go through some other plays that I think kind of comport or I guess back up this kind of initial take here. But this is, I guess, the first category of mistake that Doublelift tends to be making at, key pivotal junctures throughout the game. Now, this next mistake is a different category. And this one I would kind of say falls under the category or the umbrella of Wingcon Assessment and understanding your role in the game. Okay, so if we take a look at the game state right now, the game state's looking pretty rough. I mean, we have got some tools, our comp here, Doublelift is playing TF. They've got some pick, right, with the Rek'Sai, with the TF, with the Malphite. But at the same time, the enemy Echo is very strong. The Mbessa has very good skirmishing. Mel is very good in a front-to-back team fight. And even with Soraka in the mix, we are really going to struggle front-to-back team fights with this composition. It's very hard to burst a lot of these champions. They have a lot of good disengage and they have a lot of survivability. So as a TF main myself, if I were to be in this exact scenario, I want to avoid front-to-back team fights at all costs. I don't want a front-to-back team fight. I need to leverage my pick. I need to play the map, and I need to leverage my R to try and find man advantage opportunities. Otherwise, if I play this game in a stock standard way, the game is going to get very messy very quickly. And so what happens here is that, Doublelift makes the call to kind of contest on the Atacon. But if we take a look at the specifics, Sivir is dead for 20 seconds. Even though, yes, Mel is theoretically a little bit late, has TP. And then what ends up happening here is that he kind of gets his team excited about contesting this team fight around the Atacon. Now, there's merit to this decision. People's resistances are shredded on Atacon. And, he may think, oh, well, we have to contest. And if they get it, the game's going to be over. But I would guess, the makings of a very confident TF player, and I would say just a very confident high-low mid laner in general, is that they have complete clarity and also confidence in their ability to execute the win condition. And so one of the major themes you'll see throughout these kind of clips as we go through is Doublelift he's quite competent in fighting, quite competent mechanically, but his understanding of how to actually win, given his composition, given his champion, is a little bit off. And so here, what I would be looking to do in a scenario like this is sack Atacon for tempo. I mean, I probably wouldn't even have been bought here in the first place. I mean, I would make there's no way. I think it's unlikely they're going to be contesting the tier 2. Maybe you can defend the tier 2, whatever, but I would sack the Atacon for tempo, maybe even cover this wave, start maybe moving on to topside, maybe even TP topside, drag the Mel or someone around the map with the intention to try and either make a pick with the Rek'Sai or again, drag someone around the map and then look for a man advantage. That would be kind of my mentality, especially given that I've got a 2-item Sivir. Sivir is a champion that really needs to get to 3 items ideally. And at the end of the day, they've only got 1 dragon. We've got 2 dragons. We can slow down this baby. We can stall this game at least for another 4 minutes until Baron coming up in 25 minutes. And that could be the difference between getting Sivir to another item or again, waiting for, for some opportunistic picks. And especially as a champion like TF, this is the sort of way you need to be thinking. Let's move on to another clip. So at this point in the game, we've got TF now on 3 items, Sivir still on 2 items. And look, our composition, you can maybe make an argument for front to back team fights, but it's a really big stretch. The reason being, Rek'Sai is really going to struggle to team fight on these items. Sivir not really going to pump out a lot of damage on 2 items. Mel loves the front to back. Mel's actually very good into a lot of these champions. Echo's incredibly fed. So the likelihood that we're going to be able to win a front to back is very slim. Now, especially when you're playing a champion like TF, again, with the ability to drag people around the map and create man advantages, why would we be bothering to contest this second dragon at 23 minutes? So what ends up happening, if we kind of get a bit of context, he TP's topside, shoves it all the way out. Mel doesn't even have TP, and Bessa doesn't have TP either. All he needs to do right now is trade off this dragon, or at minimum, actually just play the map a little bit, bigger picture here. Try to make someone react on topside, create a man advantage, and then look, if Mel would have showed topside or Mbessa would have showed topside, then sure, maybe you can opt in for the 45 around dragon. But at minimum, you want to be sitting in the side lane, you want to be dragging people around the map. Now, what ends up happening is that he calls for the dragon, they play for the dragon, they play this front to back here, and as you can imagine, it's not going to end up well. So they kind of jockey for position. Sivir's trying to stay on the mid waves. And, they're really, really struggling to walk in because no one's really confident to walk in. And Malphite can't ult half of these people because, Echo's very mobile. Mel's very hard to play against. And then you've got, Soraka sitting in the background. And then here we go. TF pops the R. We try to play the front to back. Poor Rek'Sai is like, what the hell do I do? And then they just shred us in the front to back. Mel's going to be reflecting gold cards. There's absolutely zero chance that we're going to be able to win this front to back. And if you're contesting fights like this, where not only you die, but then you lose the neutral objective and you lose your tempo, it's end of review. The game is over. There's no coming back. And what I'm noticing is that Doublelift is actually getting himself into these really good positions. His lane phase is okay. He actually knows how to skirmish relatively well. But at these key pivotal junctures, he's not thinking cerebrally. He's not thinking big enough picture about the win condition and his role in said composition. Moving on to another game of Doublelifts. We are in a bit of an unfavorable game state here. We are 10 kills to 17. We're down 4k gold. In this case, our Zeri is not even on our kind of second item. Dragon is coming up. We have got 2 dragons in our back pocket, but the enemy don't have a single dragon. We've also got a matchup in the side lane where eventually Yorick is probably going to start winning that 1v1. Yorick also has a TP advantage into Viegos. We have some maybe opportunities to leverage that in the mid game. And again, our comp isn't really that spiked. Not to mention Yorick is terrible at team fighting. So this dragon here, in no way in a million years should we be contesting it. We should be trading it off for maybe even making the trade for Dragon for Rift Herald, or even just playing for control and tempo on the other side of the map with the intention to slow down this game, get our Zeri to some items, get our Yorick to some items, or maybe even just create an opportunity to 2v2 in the side lane because, us as a victor in this scenario with our Lee Sin, we're actually relatively strong. So if you want to opt in for the skill check and the 2v2 in the side lane, that's also possible as well. But what happens instead? Doublelift, not only agrees to the mid wave, and then if you are going to contest the dragon, you would never be on this side wave, because you're going to be late. So that's kind of problem number 1. But problem number 2, if we look at it from a bigger picture perspective, we're never going to be able to win this team fight anyway. So our team try to move in, not to mention we're late. And then it, turns into a very ugly scenario where we kind of go in one by one. Lee Sin's trying to make it work. And essentially 2 of us die, and it's very similar to the TF moment. We kind of soft contest, lose the neutral objective, lose farm, lose tempo. And again, these are the sorts of decisions that are really, really, they're going to have massive detrimental effects moving into that mid game, which is why I actually find that Doublelift is getting themselves into these scenarios where moving into mid game in a solid position, but frequently in these very tight games where you have to have a very particular way to win the game, can't translate it. And that is the makings, or that this is the sort of thing that he needs to tighten up. And I will say, I'm going to go out on a limb here, I think Doublelift probably has this knowledge. He comes from a very sophisticated esports background. He's played with a lot of great players. He probably knows this. He just needs to engage in those lull states, ask those high quality questions. How do we win this game? What's the win condition? What's the next neutral objective? And what do I want to do about it? And that should have a flow-on effect to our lane assignments, TP usage, the way we deploy on the map, etc., etc. Now what we're going to cover is the third category of errors, which is some small some people would call them 1%ers, but in the higher elo games, they really matter. And one of them is lane assignments. Something that I work a lot with my own coaching clients is fixing lane assignments. Now, as an immobile mage, okay, you don't have the luxury of playing the map very effectively because as a Victor, for example, we can't shove and move very effectively. We can't out pressure a lot of people in the side lane, especially if you're not in a commanding position. And especially if you already have a losing top lane, you need to be in the mindset of what lane assignment generates me the most control and pressure on the map, okay? Now, in this particular moment, the Yorick was struggling a little bit into the Viego, but we were actually doing okay. We're actually up in gold into the Syndra, and we actually can probably contest the 2v2 with us and Lee Sin into the Xin Zhao Syndra. So what ends up happening here is we kind of come off a death here, and we actually have the ability to potentially fix lane assignments. So what we should do, if you're ever unsure about the enemy, where they're going to go, deploy mid, see what's up, and then we can fix the lane assignments. Now, yes, that may mean in certain realities that we lose this top tower. That's okay. That's completely okay because these tier ones don't really mean much anyway. What's more important is net pressure from fixing lane assignments. Now, what ends up happening is because we're not thinking about our lane assignments, we have now Yorick into Syndra. Syndra's obviously very good into Yorick here. And we also are not getting prior into Viego. So what ends up happening, especially in this game state, is that now our Zeri and our Rakana are sacking prior in the 2v2 mid. Yorick is sacking prior in the 1v1 into the Syndra, and we're sacking prior into the Viego in the top lane. So now from a jungler's perspective, at least poor Lee Sin's like, what the fuck do I do? How do I win this game? I've got 0 lanes of priority. We can't contest Rift Herald. I can't even win a 2v2 with Yorick on the side lane. So we're just in this really, really shit position. Now, if we're playing devil's advocate and maybe this was the big brain play, or maybe, if someone asked the question, well, Curtis, if I had to go topside because I didn't want to lose this tower or yada, 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 how could I have made this work? Well, what he could have done the moment he saw Syndra bot side, and he saw Xin Zhao on bot side, he could have pinged assistance topside with the intention to get the hover and just trade sides of the map. We could potentially just ping assistance topside. We saw Xin Zhao bot. Maybe Lee Sin could start snag a rift, or just at minimum ping assistance and just trade sides of the map, get Lee Sin to hover, and we can even maybe make a play onto the Viego. But now what happens as this event unfolds, we're now in the side lane with no TP. Yorick's getting pounded. We're getting shoved in. We have no adaptability. Mid lane's getting shoved in. And so what's happening, we're on the back foot. Our team is massively on the back foot. And so the enemy now has complete control of the map. We're now just a victim to whatever the enemy decides to do. And it gets very uncomfortable. And typically this leads to unfavorable fights. And, we look at this event here, which is kind of a fight breaks out and I think the enemy win. And a lot of people say, isn't this just luck? Like how could you say that lane assignments have anything to do about this? Well, this is because lane assignments and lack of pressure leads to the enemy having if we look at it from the vision perspective, they have all the kind of terrain advantage in the world. They have all the vision in the world, whereas we're the ones reacting. Typically, that means we are at a terrain disadvantage. We're at a positioning disadvantage, which typically leads to the enemy getting better quality fights. And obviously, Lee Sin's now having to, doesn't know what the hell to do, ends up pathing towards the 0-4 Yorick. The game implodes. So this is one of those small things that can kind of fly under the radar because it's not like, Doublelift died here. It's not like there's a giant red flag that goes, this is a bad play from Doublelift. But as a mid laner, if you really want to speed up your climb, you need to start taking an active participant or an active role in the way the mid game pans out. You can't play like an 80 carry. Like an 80 carry is a different mentality. 80 carry is like a lot of the time you're backseating. It's like, I'm just going to swap lane and summons, get in mid lane, try to contest prior, be there, rock up for major team fights and play those fights well mechanically and do my job. Obviously that is an oversimplification, but as a mid laner, you are more of the mid lane role forces you to understand the game more cerebrally and the bigger picture. You need to be a more active participant in the macro. And we're kind of seeing this in a lot of, Doublelift mid games. Now, the last little clip I will want to go over here, and I wasn't going to include this, but I think it is a good one to mention, is that we do see moments where there is a lack of champion mastery. Obviously, Doublelift doesn't have the most sophisticated mid background, and there are plays that, you can just tell he doesn't have that in-depth understanding of of like how to win a game or what sort of fights you should be looking for as a victor, for example, right? So a 2v2 kind of breaks out on top side. Now, if we take a look at the game state, obviously Lee Sin's quite strong. Xin Zhao's also quite strong. And our Rakan kind of hovers our Lee Sin, and it looks like a weird little bit of a play topside, right? And we have TP. Then Xin Zhao and Seraphine go for this play. These sorts of plays, these sorts of kind of opportunistic 2v2s and 3v3s, albeit, as a mid laner, it's good to be adaptable to the chaos and be ready to TP on a moment's notice. But these sorts of plays are really not good for a champion like Victor. Victor hates TPing to fights late, especially if the enemy are not committed. And especially when we've already used our key abilities, Rakan used everything, used ultimate. But B, Victor's not really a champion that wants to run into the enemy. And especially with a champion like Xin Zhao that has ultimate, it's actually very annoying for us as a Victor. This is never the sort of play that I would TP to. Me as a Victor in this scenario, what I want to do is I want to leverage my prio. I might hover, right, with the intention to get first move into the Kai'Sa and hover, or maybe swap the lane assignment to my Zeri or something like that. But I never want to go for a straight up kind of, 3v3 in these sorts of scenarios. And as we'll see, what happens, Lee Sin even plays it well, Rakan plays it well, Victor TP's in. And because, again, Xin Zhao is able to create a lot of space with we go forward, Kai'Sa comes in, and it actually ends up being not even close. We just kind of get annihilated in this 3v3 here. And this is something that as a Victor main, if you were a main of Victor, you'd be able to be like, see this and be like, this is a very uncomfortable fight. This is not really the sort of fight I want to be looking for. And again, it's not really aligned with our champion's identity. Now, you will see inklings of this in the TF games with looking for questionable fights and other scenarios. This one is, I would say, definitely less of a problem. I would say if we kind of give this a percentage out of all the types of problems that Doublelift has, this is down at the very bottom. But I thought it was just worth mentioning. You can definitely see those moments where he lacks Gen Mastery, and that's to be expected. At the end of the day, he's not a mid laner. He's coming into the role new, and to be honest, he's still doing a very good job. So, look, overall, I'm very impressed. I've no doubt that he will eventually get there. I think that if he can take on board these sorts of pieces of advice, think more cerebrally about the game, take a more active role in the mid-game macro, think critically about lane assignments, win conditions, I think he has a very good chance because I think mechanically he's a very good player. So look, that's my advice. I didn't want to overcomplicate it. Some simple little things here. If you want to see more of this stuff, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you for another video soon. Cheers.